Don has done a lot of work. Don is our name is part of our English faculty. He does a lot with our students as well as with our first generation, first year students on the NAST 105 seminar, and has worked quite a lot within the last 2 years, right, with our DevEd students, our first generation students. And he's done 2 action research proposals that have, he did one in the winter and one in the spring that he's going to share with you. And so I'd like a warm welcome for Don McCluskey.
Is that good? All right. Okay. So, welcome everybody back from lunch. I was thinking, I was talking with Greg before everybody took off that everybody got all worked up before lunch. Now they're going to go eat and get lazy. And so everybody's going to be grumpy and lazy when it comes time for the presentation. So hopefully that's not the case. I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Don McCluskey. I'm from Lummi. Always kind of wonder about how to start. I think I'll start by saying that I grew up for the first 10 years of my life on the reservation. I was raised by my great-grandmother and my grandmother. They were both traditional people, traditional speakers of the language, and very, very, very much loving people. So, you know, I spent the first 10 years of my life not questioning identity or sense of place or what it is to be people or any of those things that sometimes we as Indian people question. And at about age 11, I think my grandmother passed away. She was the one that was primarily raising me. So I went back to live with my mom, who I had grown up with as she'd been my sister my whole life. And all of a sudden she was my mom. And she was very, very, very adamant and opposed to being Indian. She had grown up in an environment where it wasn't acceptable to be Native. It wasn't a good thing. And her solution was to immerse yourself in the white culture as much as possible. And, you know, attempt to assimilate. And of course you guys can tell by looking at me that I can pass pretty easily. Right? But you know, I think passing is potentially something we can do on the outside, but for myself, it was something that I could never do on the inside. I tried for a number of years. I did a number of things. You know, I went and worked in the non-native world. I spent several years in the military. You know, I did whatever I could to try and adapt and appropriate white cultural values and norms and beliefs and practices. I've been to every kind of church you can think of, looking for God, you know, the whole gambit, right? So when I thought about what am I gonna say when I get up there, I decided I'd tell this story. I was in kindergarten. I went to Sunnyland Elementary School. For those of you that are from Bellingham, you probably know where that's at. I went to Sunnyland Elementary School, and usually in town, when I was growing up, no matter what school I went to, I was one of about three to five Indians probably. And in this school, at this particular time, 1975, I was one of 2 natives in the entire school. The other native was my cousin. It was my first cousin, actually. And I remember sitting at a table with 4 or 5 other boys, who happened to be all non-native, of course, and my cousin sitting at another table with a bunch of non-native girls. And it was the first day of kindergarten. She came over and she walked by me and she said, "Come here, I want to talk to you." She pulled me aside and she goes, "What do you think about all these white people?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm kind of uncomfortable, but it's okay. So I can contend with it, I guess." And she went outside and we walked over to the corner and we talked about it. And you could tell my cousin was really emotional, right? And I tried to help her feel better about where we were at. It felt like I was in prison, now that I think back about it. I felt like I was being forced to be in a place where I was uncomfortable, where I couldn't be myself. And so my cousin went and sat back down, and I went and sat back down, and the boys at my table said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And they go, "What are you doing talking to that girl?" I said, "That's my cousin." "That's not your cousin." I said, "Yeah, that's my first cousin." "No, you're not Indian." I said, "Yeah, I'm Lummi." Because like I said, I had grown up in this very traditional context. I never doubted my identity. It devastated me. I walked home that day, I walked out of the school, my grandmother was there to meet me. We walked down James Street to Young Stocks Market. I lived on Carolina Street, right next to Young Stocks, in a greenhouse. We walked in there, and she could tell that I was devastated. She said, "Come on, get up, grandson, we're going over to see your grandma, my great-grandma, who lived across the alley from us." She brought me over there. My grandmother sat me down. They spoke to each other in a language. And then my great-grandmother says to me, "Where are you from?" in the language. And I told her what I'd been taught to say. I said, "I'm Lummi." And she said, "That's right. You're Lummi because you say you're Lummi, and nobody else can tell you different. You are who you are. It's just that way. Right? Nobody can change that for you." And so I carried that with me my whole life. Right? No matter who thought I was what, or no matter what I thought of myself, I always knew deep down inside that this is who I am, this is where I'm from, and the other people are my people. So that's kind of one of the many experiences that I try and share with my students. And through all the things that I've been through in my life, I picture myself, or I think of myself as standing in the same place as my students. When they come in, I don't treat them like, "Well, gee, I've been to college, so I'm way better than you." I remind them on a daily basis, I'm just like you. I've been in the same places you have. I have the same issues you have. And I struggled through college too. Right? But it can be done. You can do it. Right? I'm trying to instill in them that it can be done, because it can. Obviously, we're all testament to that. So, when I started here as an instructor, I was real leery. I was real apprehensive. I knew that I always wanted to be a teacher. That was something that I had set as a goal from first entering into college as a student here at NWIC. So that first year was real bumpy, as some of you can imagine. And then, but I realized rather quickly that it was a privilege to be in a place to where I could work with developmental education students, the DevEd students. Because they're coming in, they're first generation college students, they're non-traditional students, they're first year experience students, they fall into these categories, right, that I was that person at one time, right, so I could really relate to them. And I understood that one of the things that I had to do was I had to improve their ability to navigate the academic environment, right? For the DevEd students, it's ultimately important that they hit the ground running, right? Because those skills that are necessary to survive in the academic world, the sooner you learn them, the better off you are. And so when I was approached to do this action research project, I said, yeah, I had these ideas running through my head, and I said, I want to do this. And I decided I was going to do an action research project, establishing academic foundations at the developmental education level. And I'm a big advocate for action research. I know a lot of the faculty here at Northwest Indian College don't engage in the process, but I strongly encourage you to do so, because if you're like me and you constantly question your methodologies when you step into the classroom every day, I'm always asking myself, am I doing the most I can for my students? Am I giving them something? What are they walking away with today? Not just, at the end of the quarter of a grade. What do they walk away with each day? And so I realized that, this is something that I had to do. And I said, yeah, I'll go for it. It wasn't the money, it was the chance to kind of, immerse myself into this idea of studying this potential strategy that may potentially work for my students, right? So, let's see, so my proposal was, this is, the proposal form is pretty cut and dry, it's real short, it's real simple, and it's real sweet. The teaching, learning, issue, or outcome that I hope to improve and why. As an instructor at the developmental education level, it became apparent rather quickly that students are beginning their academic careers at a deficit, right? They fall into multiple categories that, in effect, often serve to ensure not only their lack of academic preparedness, but also their individual potential to see the benefits of academic success early on in their academic careers.
Could you sort of define what is meant by developmental education level?
Pre-college.
Oh.
For those of you who don't know, I'm sorry. Is there anybody else that needs clarification on that? What we're talking about is pre-college math and English.
Oh, okay.
Right? So this is the continuation of my proposal. Some travel college students, or most often, fall into one or several of these categories. They're either high school dropouts or push-outs, first-generation college students, first-year college students, non-traditional students, college stop-outs, single parents, etc., etc. So that's what I mean when I say travel college students start at a deficit. We come with all these issues that need to be contended with, on top of being academically successful, right? So the developmental education level is, as I'm sure you're all aware of, where the individual student begins to build their academic foundation. This foundation serves to ensure their academic success throughout the remainder of their college experience. It is at this level that student skills and preparedness must be assessed so that appropriate measures can be taken by both the instructor and the student to begin engaging in the construction of a sound and supportive academic skills foundation. Pedagogical strategy. So the first thing I intended to do with this experiment was to initiate a discussion with my English 98 students regarding academic preparedness, academic resources and the use thereof, goal setting, and ensuring success for the college student. Right? So I just sat them down for one day, 1 hour, one class period, and we talked about these things. Right? So the resources that I used the materials that I used to further that conversation was, I grabbed the Northwest Indian College catalog, right? And in there is a list of academic resources. It's pretty cut and dry, right? And so we go over the academic resources that are available to them. And all the while I'm sharing with them my personal experience with my time here as a student at Northwest Indian College, right? I'm telling them, for certain, I guarantee you that when I was a student here, the more I became engaged in the academic, extracurricular, or co-curricular activities here at the college, the more part of the community I felt, right? I encouraged and I asked an academic advisor to come and speak in the classroom regarding the same subject, and they did. I acquired some information from electronic resources, obviously the internet. The next thing I did was I assigned a self-reflective writing response where they describe themselves personally, indicating which type of student they are or were, first generation, first quarter, non-traditional, etc., etc. The materials I used for that was a class discussion to facilitate students in determining their status as NWIC students. So I sat my students down, I said, all right, pull out a piece of paper, write down all the things you are. You're a non-traditional student. Are you first generation? This is your first year experience. What quarter are you in? Are you a single parent? All the attributes that make up their identity as a college student. So then, I also asked them to include this in their writing responses. Principally, their reason for having chosen higher education and what they intended to do with their degree upon completion. We ask our students that all the time, right? And what's the most common response? Why are you at college? Well, because I want a degree, right? It's kind of a vague, real broad, general answer. And it's usually the answer you get from first generation or first year college students or generate students. I also have them address the obstacles that they see potentially preventing them from being successful during the present quarter. So I don't ask them to address obstacles they perceive in the 2 years right now, this quarter, what could potentially prevent you from being academically successful? And then I remind them, I also have them consider and address what attributes they may already possess that will contribute to their academic success, right? Because we all come with good things as well. So the materials I use for that, it's important at this point in the assignment to explain to students that college experience is so much more than a degree to hang on the wall, and to also reassure them that there may be obstacles to their academic success, but that there are also ways to overcome those obstacles, primarily the academic resources that are available to us as college students here at NWIC. And I also remind them that, once again, they bring wealth of knowledge and experience to NWIC that will aid them in being academically successful. Right? The steps I took to implement strategy, I did some pre-assessment based upon the students' initial reflective writing responses. So I took the first writing response after the instruction, and I read them. And I read them unbiasedly, without judgment. I didn't have a pen in my hand when I read them. I just read them, right? And I got to know my students. And then daily instruction, and continually being willing to reiterate time and time again the necessity of the development of academic skills and accessing academic resources to ensure academic success. Plain and simple, right? And then I did some post-assessment based upon students' responsiveness to daily instruction, writing assignments, reading assignments, and the final reflective writing response. The steps I took to measure student learning and improvement, I compared and contrast the first assignment with the last assignment. I utilized some direct measures like weekly assignments, grades, attendance, final papers. And I used some indirect measures also, student evaluations and daily interactions with individual students and the class as a whole. And the one thing that I did do is I didn't hide the fact from my students that I was doing research. I was open and honest with them. I said, look, I'm engaging in this thing. It's called action research. Here's how it works. This is my intention. This is what I plan to do. And that way, I was better able to assess and measure the outcomes because the students were fully aware of what was going on, right? And so they too became invested in the research. Here's the student data. You can see that I've taken the names off the student A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I think H is down there at the bottom too, but you can't see it. And so you can see that in DevEd, I've found out, I've come to know that, or understand that generally, it's anywhere from a third to 2/3 a third students who are unsuccessful for whatever reason. The reasons are multiple, right? And then 2/3 that are successful. More often than not, it's right around 50-50. And so you can see that with these students, they all exhibited some of those characteristics that tribal college students do. They were non-traditional, they were first generation, they were GED students, they were stop-outs, non-traditional, first generation, GED, first generation high school, non-traditional, first generation GED, and on and on and on, right? And so every member of the class together, they all embody one or more of those attributes, right? And so I took those into consideration while the class was taking place, right? And while we continued to discuss academic resources and things of that nature. It caught on. It took off like wildfire. Students were very, very receptive to it, right? They agreed and they understood, oh, okay, I get it now, right? And I thought it was, here's why I thought it was important, because I had to teach those things to myself when I was a student here. Nobody taught them to me. Nobody said, hey, if you become really good friends with your academic advisor, and they know what's going on with you already, when something does arise, they've already done some preemptive work with regard to whatever that situation is, right? I didn't know things like that. I didn't know the computer lab was available to me, or the library, or any of those things, right? And these students did, and you can see clearly it's demonstrated by their attendance that they were willing to participate. They were invested in the course. They regularly attended. I think for the majority of these students, if they did miss days, it was for cultural reasons, right? Because obviously it was in the winter. It was for cultural reasons, or, you know, appointments, things of that nature. They didn't just skip class to be skipping class. And you can see that these two students here, I think, faced the most difficulty in the course. This particular student, C, had taken a course. This was her third time trying to take DevEd in the 90 days. And as far as I know, she's yet to pass that course. This person had been in the course twice. Their attendance was real low, their commitment to the course was real low, and it seemed whatever strategies or methodologies I attempted to employ in any given day were without, you know, they didn't stop me from trying. But you can see that attendance was good for the rest of the students, right? And so were the final paper scores. Right? We're giving them 100 points, and you know most of them scored 90 or better, 185. Over here in the second to the left column, I guess you can see the degree that they're in. So most of the time, as we know, when students first enter college, they're not really sure. They haven't declared a degree yet. Most of these students have, right? DTAs, NASD, CDS, NASD again, DTA. So my conclusion for this research was the research showed me the dynamic paradigms that exist not only within the tribal college environment, but also at the DevEd level. I was able to recall having been that DevEd student, making the experience more empowering for me, right? It empowered me to believe in my abilities as an instructor. Most importantly, I believe I facilitated an understanding of the academic environment for some students, which empowered them to become more efficient students and helped them begin building their academic skills foundation. And I kind of kept track of these students after the course. You know, they would skip me and go to Kathy for English 100, and then the following year I started doing 101, so that I was getting some of them back in 101. And I would keep track of them through Kathy, and Kathy would let me know, you know, how they were doing. You know, were they consistently writing, you know, and adhering to the structure? Were they accessing academic resources? Were they, you know, developing their academic skills still? And we keep in pretty close contact about those things, right? And so, if you guys want to look at this particular action research project, it's available online on the teaching and learning portion of the website, and you can access it there. I have a couple copies if you can't wait. So,
That's awesome.
next one. Oh, I skipped one. All right. Anyway, what's the time constraint for my next one? So,
Donnie, you just hit that arrow key back on the keyboard.
Yeah.
that one. Why not?
So can we clap for that first one?
I mean, really what I want to express to you guys is that it's important to engage in this action research. It's unfamiliar. It feels odd when you're sitting down and you're filling out the proposal, but come see me. You know, I've done it twice now. I feel like I'm an expert on it. Right? Come see me. I'll show you how to hook up the forms. I'm on the teaching and learning committee. I'll even sit there and advocate for you. Okay? So the next project I did was, I want to say was it last winter quarter? Or spring quarter. And I decided that after several conversations, and like the conversation we had the first day, students don't show up to class, right? Or they show up for a while and then they begin to fade out, and the next thing you know, you don't see them until week 10 when they come to you asking, please give me a grade, right? So I can continue to do whatever. And a lot of the times, you know, throughout my life and throughout my little bit of time then as an instructor, you know, I had heard the reference to Indian time. Right? We all talk about it, we all joke about it. But when I think back to my childhood, and I think about, I used to go to the elders' lunches with my grandmothers all the time, right? And when I went to the elders' lunch, and it started at 11, right? We didn't show up at 11. We were there at like 9:30 or 10, right? And so I always thought that Indian time meant that, if anything, you were early. By like an hour. Okay. And then as I grew up, I began to hear that Indian time means you show up whenever the hell you want, if at all, and then you blame being Indian for that, right? And it doesn't work with me. And so, I recognize this in my students, and it's in my syllabus that I'm very rigid and unyielding about punctuality and regular attendance. I set those expectations high. The reason I do that is because I know that they're capable of doing it. You know how I know? Because I was capable of doing it, right? So I decided that after a talk with a few colleagues that I was going to attempt to dispel the myth of Indian time. It sounds real wordy and mythical and all that, but it's not. So as an instructor, I continually struggled with my students often seeming inability to consistently attend class on time and on a regular basis. Well, everybody gets a handout. Kathy, can you help me with that? Sorry, man. So even with my daily reemphasis on the importance of regular attendance and punctuality in order to ensure academic success, again with the academic success, students often fail to do so and have, on numerous occasions, albeit cynically at times, blamed the ideal referred to as Indian time. It was my intention to once again deliberately tackle the issue of regular attendance and punctuality to ensure students' academic success. Then to go to the strategy I tended to use. Over the course of the quarter, I juxtaposed specific culturally accurate historic examples of preparedness. Right? Where this comes from is this talk. For a number of years, I worked for the Coast Salish Institute. Right? I was part of the Semiongo project. I did research work for Sharon Kinley and the Coast Salish Institute for a number of years while I was going to college. And one of the stories that I always remember Sharon referring to is the ReefNet story, right? It's like this historically accurate metaphor that represents our people's intentional preparation, preparedness, deliberateness, right? For survival, okay? And as I see it, college is survival for our contemporary people, right? That's really what we're talking about here. Cheryl says it all the time. I say it all the time to my students. It's more than getting a degree to hang on the wall. It's more than attaining employment someday. We're talking about the social and economic survival as well as sustainability of Indian people. Right? That's what education is for us. So, deliberateness and connectedness. Let's see. I'll start over. Over the course of the quarter, I juxtaposed specifically culturally accurate historical examples of preparedness, deliberateness, and connectedness to one's environment, specifically reef netting, with the students' contemporary academic experience here at Northwest Indian College. By utilizing the historic examples of reef netting to sustain a family throughout the winter as a task that requires preparedness, deliberateness, and connectedness to one's environment, I hope to convey to my students that it is those very same cultural attributes that directly determine the successfulness of a native student. Right? So it was my further hope. The research would allow students to conclude that although the resources and environments may have changed, the objectives, outcomes, and tools necessary to ensure success are the same as they always have been. So in other words, the resources now is not, acquiring materials to build a reef net to go out and fish so that we can prepare fish to put away for the winter to guarantee that the people survive. That's getting an education so that we can become employable, so that we can get money to feed our kids. Okay? But the attributes necessary to make sure that happen are the same attributes that were necessary for us culturally to keep the reef net going. Right? Here's a picture from the internet that I intended to cite, Kathy, but you can't see it on the slide. I cited my source, man. So the reef net. This is a demonstration of how the reef net works in a traditional context or concept, I guess. And you can see how large the reef net really is, right? How long the ropes are. Look at the size of the anchors. We're talking about big boulders that are used for those anchors, right? You can clearly see, as it is indicated by the pictures of the traditional reef net, that it must have taken a great many hours to gather the resources to complete the construction of the reef net. Once again, resources were gathered to construct a primary net, a reserve net, and ropes and mending twine. It must have taken a great many hours for a number of people to bring the project to fruition. Then they had to spend a great deal more time fishing, which of course would be followed immediately by food preparation for the following winter, right? So it was a process that we were continually engaged in, right, throughout the year. Another picture of the reef net. This is a different angle, so you can see how much material we're talking about. Imagine gathering enough of these to construct multiple nets and several hundred feet of ropes and mending twine, right? Just gathering them. I don't know how many of you got stung by stinging nettles. Yeah, we know, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure there were no gloves at 1200. But they're made now. So the strategy implemented. Students were rewarded with points, right, for punctuality, regular attendance, and assignments completed on time. The points represented the hypothetical resource of stinging nettles, right? So I would give them so many points for showing up on time, regular attendance, paper on time, and those things represented their resource, the stinging nettles. The students with the most points or resources at the end of the quarter were compensated with Fred Meyer gift cards, yay, that they could use to feed their real life families. So while they're working on this experiment, right, to acquire these resources, these hypothetical or metaphorical resources, they're really working towards acquiring real life resources that they can feed their kids with. And as I demonstrated earlier, a lot of our students are single parents, they're younger parents, they're not traditional students, they fall into those categories, and I can tell you from personal experience, sometimes Indians get hungry. The students, measures taken to assess student learning improvement. I use some direct measures, obviously, attendance, weekly assignments, reflection papers regarding their perceptions of the research's effectiveness. And once again, I didn't hide from them the fact that I was doing research. I was very open with that. And in this particular instance, even more so than the last time, I think it created more of an environment where the students were more than willing to be invested. They were stoked, right? It was cool. Indirect measures, of course, I used periodic conversations regarding the students' perceptions and instructional observations of students' overall performance from the beginning to the end of the quarter.
Don, this is 98, English 98.
English 98, yeah. Here's the student data, okay? And once again, you can see the third, 2/3 ratio there. This is the first half of the data that I wouldn't fit on one slide. You can see these were the students' midterm grades, and all these instructors here know that we give a pass or a satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and midterm. You can see that most of the students completed the vast majority of the weekly assignments. You can see that most students ended up with a pretty high grade, right? Their attendance was pretty consistent.
Just a quick question. We had one student with very low attendance, but actually did well in class.
Yeah. The way I structure my points for my English 98 class is it's infallible, right? And I'm honest with my students about that too. If you're good at attendance and you're good at weekly assignments, you'll probably earn a C, right? If you're good at the final and you're good at attendance or weekly assignments, right? If you do 2 of the 3 things that I grade on, you generally pass the class.
Yeah, so I noticed in teaching too that there's no spot on JIPs for tardies.
Yeah, it's like late unexcused or late excused or something like that. Yeah.
So in your findings, did you find out?
I did it again.
Did you find out that it improved?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The tardies?
Yeah, as you'll find out here in a second.
And if not, then like what do you do to you mark them off for being tardy?
Yeah, I absolutely did. Yeah, I kept track of it on the sign-in sheet. Who showed up on time, who was early, who was late, right? And so the points weren't given away; they were handed out pretty precisely, right? So students who ate through the winter as a result of winning the card, right? I mean, that was the goal. But I'll tell you this is one thing the thing that amazed me most about the whole experiment was that I had to chase these guys down and give them their gift cards. By the end of the quarter, the gift card wasn't even the thing that they considered, right? They were just in it to prove to themselves and to prove to their classmates and the instructor that they were invested in the course and they were invested in their education. That was the coolest part, man. I had to chase each and every one of them down. Hey, have you seen so-and-so? There's this card right here, you know. And so student K got first place, student B second, student C third, and student J fourth place. Okay. So conclusion, although this particular action research project did not necessarily ensure a higher than normal success rate with respect to course completion, it did appear to have dramatically impacted the students who perhaps would have succeeded in the course regardless of whether or not they had been exposed to the cultural example. Most students showed up on average of 15 minutes to a half hour early for class. They came prepared, most often with questions regarding the week's reading assignment or writing assignment. And in short, I believe it merely improved my potential of reaching those who were underprepared and/or academically not ready for college experience, while at the same time drastically improved the overall experience for those who would have otherwise already been invested in successfully completing the course and developing the skills necessary to ensure academic success. Right? So it may have and it may not have improved the likelihood of those that would have normally been unsuccessful, you know, making them more successful. I don't doubt any bit that it did impact them in some positive way, right? At the very least, it was an experience that they learned from. And then the students who would have already done well did way well, right? And they excelled not only at, you know, punctuality and regular attendance and meeting class deadlines or assignment deadlines, but I believe they grew as individuals as a result of the research and the experiment. That's it for the end of my. Like I said, the first one is available online. You have a copy of the second report. Kind of the point I wanted to get at is this: is that a while back in 101 or 102, we were reading something, and one of the students had asked a question about citing a source, and we talked about that it's not necessary to cite things that are common knowledge, right? So when I think about everybody's question, you know, what's cultural, how can I teach that in the classroom, all of those things, what comes to mind is that there are things that are common knowledge, right? Like the example of the reef net. Who can't find out information about the reef net, right? And we can understand by what that is, you know, how much work that might have took, you know, that it took things like preparedness and deliberateness and you know, attributes like that maybe aren't necessarily precisely cultural attributes, but you know, they are, right? And they're definitely attributes that are necessary to being a successful student. So I think examples like that are kind of, they're okay. Right? Those are potentially cultural examples that we could use in the classroom, native or non-native. So what I have left is, and this may be bold, I thought that we could get native instructors together with non-native instructors and just talk about some things that are maybe would work in this instance that are common knowledge, cultural considerations. Does that make sense? So if you guys can
Don and I do
organize it.
Tell us.
Well, evidently it has to be by sight, right? Okay, we don't want lummies talking to Nez purses. Right, Phil?